Hey guys, in this video, we are going to create Spider-Man's armor, such as what you see here. Now, for what we're going to be doing is, I'm going to start out with a torso here, which you could download in the description below this video. So yeah, just go look in the description below in this YouTube and click on that link and you're going to be able to download this base torso so you guys could follow me. Or if you already have your own torso that you have made, you could also just use that. All right. Or if you just want to create the armor on a surface like a sphere or a box, you could also do that. You could accurately still follow along. But yeah, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our sculpt mode. Okay. And we are going to mask an area on the torso where we know we want our armor to be. So let's go to our paint mask right here. And we could also go to our stroke and turn on stabilize stroke. We could also bring down the factor and the radius so the stroke value is not so intense. The stabilize stroke will allow us to create straight lines more accurately, but you also want a little bit of control, so you might want to bring that down. Make sure you have symmetry on as you are doing this. First thing we gotta do is let's go to our paint mask and using the stabilize stroke, let's go ahead and paint out an area where we want the armor to go. You might want to bring down your brush size if it's too big. Just press F on your keyboard, bring it down, or you could increase the strength. Shift F on your keyboard and just crank up the strength. Actually, that's what we need to do. For our strength, let's crank it all the way up so that we are creating an opaque paint mask here. And yeah, let's go ahead and paint this. So I know I want the armor to go here, and then it's gonna just come down into the chest here. And then it's going to also take shape onto the side here of his oblique area. It's going to follow the shape of his side of his stomach here. It's just going to go ahead and come down right here. And I could even make it slightly curvier. Yeah, like this. And it's going to end up all the way up to here. And I want to cover up slightly more of this area on the side. I'm going to go and paint this out. There you go. And then we could fill the rest of this in with the mask. And to do that, we should just turn off the stabilize stroke. We don't need that for now. We're just going to fill in the color. And we could also increase the brush size to make it faster for us to paint this out. And be careful around the outline. This is where you need to start to bring down the brush size and just fill this color in. Yeah, I want this part to be slightly straighter. So I'm going to go back to my stabilize stroke. I think there's too much curve around this part. If you want to erase a mask, just hold control on your keyboard and you can erase the mask part that you don't need. I'm going to turn up my radius and my factor so I could draw a straighter line with it. There you go, something like that. Could probably make it a tad bit wider. Comes down like that. Wider. Okay, so we got that shape. Now we need to create the spider shape on the middle, right on the middle here. I'm gonna go ahead and bring down my stabilized stroke. Actually, we could turn off the stabilized stroke because we are going to create the head of the spider and the body of the spider, and it's going to be more organic, so we don't really need straight lines. And stabilized stroke is really good if you want to do straight lines, but for now we're just doing the body. Okay, so let's go ahead and hold Control on your keyboard to erase the part of the area where we're going to have the shape of the spider. And here, have it come down the bottom part of the spider here. At the head and then the body. So just using this masking method, all you need to do is mask out the part of the design that you want to use for the armor. All right, so now that we are done masking the design that we want for our mesh here, let's go ahead and extract this so that we could have a separate piece for what we have masked out. We need a separate mesh for that. Let's go to Mask, Mask Extract, and this is very important. Make sure you turn off Extract as Solid and press OK. And just wait for a bit. And you should have, if you press G and just move it, you should have this separate mesh right here that's been created. Now let's go ahead and just rename that right away. I'm gonna call this one armor. And let's go ahead and isolate it, Shift H. Now, if we kind of look from the top view, we could see that there's some of these anatomy forms that we see on the mesh here. What I'm talking about this right here. You could see the indication of the six-pack there. I don't really mind too much about the shape of the chest, it's okay, but as far as the indication of the abs and even the individual striation of the chest muscles, we really don't want to show those. So what we could do is go select our mesh here and go back to sculpting mode. And let's go to our draw brush. We could bring down the strength for our draw brush. We want it very subtle. So let's say we could begin on the ab area here. There's a little bit of mesh that's pushed in, so we could kind of pull it out using the draw brush. You could smooth it out, going back and forth between the draw brush and the smooth brush. For the smooth brush, I'm actually going to increase the strength so I could easily smooth it. And also here, and right here you can see the obliques. We want to add some clay on top here where it looks like it's pushed in, and then let's smooth it. And another thing is, if you guys look at the edges here, you could see it's rough. So what we could do is we could also smooth that out. We could go to all of these parts here and then hold shift and then just smooth it. Now you're gonna see that the edges here will get round, but I'll show you how to bring back the corners so that any area that you want to stay sharp, you could still fix it. But yeah, this is good. We could smooth this out. Even here, we could smooth it. So you can see it's starting to get rounder, but I'll show you how to sharpen it. Don't worry. Okay, so done with the smoothing. Now what we could do is we could sharpen some parts up. So you could see this got rounder. This part got rounder. So what we want to do is we want to pinch this edge and this edge. That way it will bring it closer, so it will have that sharp feel to it again. And we could do that using the pinch brush right here. So with the pinch brush, the way you want to do this is you want to be able to paint your brush so that it's only touching a little bit of the ends of whatever you want to round out. Because I know I want to round this out, so that means I only want to touch somewhere around this area subtly. So using the pinch brush, just look at my brush here as I'm doing it. Let me just zoom out. I'm going to bring down my brush size. I'm going to crank up my strength for this. If you don't see an effect, make sure you crank it up. And just go ahead and pinch it. And you can see what's happening already. Got sharper. And I want this to be sharper too. So I'm going to go ahead and just do this part. And this here. And let's say maybe this, I also want to make this round corner sharp. I could do that using the pinch brush. Could bring down the brush size. There you go. And also this here. The smaller your brush size, the more you could get it to look sharper. And also here, I want this to be sharper. Right there and here. Alright, so once we are all good with this, you smooth it out everything and you sharpen whatever you need to sharpen. What we need to do is actually I wanna, this might be too thin, so I'm gonna go ahead and mask this area out and just make it a little thicker using my grab brush. There you go. So anything that you want to change, do so now, because what we're gonna do is we are going to add some volume to this. All right, okay, that's all good. All right, after we are done polishing this up, let's go to our object mode. We need to add thickness to this, but before we add thickness to this, the wireframe here, we turn on wireframe, it's not really looking good, the topology. We could clean this up by using the quad remesher tool. Okay, you can download the quad remesher tool, the add-on, if you go to this website, and you could download a trial version. And if you like it, you could always purchase the license, which doesn't cost much at all. But this quad remesher tool allows to have a cleaner topology. This is going to be good for us if we want to sculpt cleaner. All right. You could also just manually retopologize this, but since I'm not going to animate this, this is just going to be for rendering, and I'm not gonna rig this or anything. The quad remesher tool would be fine. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and select this, and yeah, make sure that you go to edit preferences and you go to your add-on and install the add-on, and then you go, when you go to your press N, you're gonna see, oops, I actually have to turn it on. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go and turn it on. So I'm gonna type in quad. There you go. I'm gonna turn that on. Okay, so once you turn that on, the add-on, you should see it here on the tabs, quad remesher, and we could go ahead and remesh this. For the quad count, you wanna keep it at a value that is just high enough so that you're gonna be able to keep the shape as much as possible, especially around the sharp corners. If you keep it too low, then you're going to lose a lot of the shape. You don't want it too high where it's going to bog down your computer. At the same time, you don't want the quad count to be too low where it's going to lose the shape when you remesh it. Okay, so this requires for you to mess around with it. Okay, so I'm going to go, I already know what to enter here. I'm going to set it to 6, 200, there's enter, and then adaptive size is 50%. Check on adapt quad count, detect hard edges by angle, so it will try its best to create the geometry around those angles and keep it clean and keep the shape of the angles. And just go ahead and remesh it. Okay, oops, just make sure you select your object, otherwise there's nothing to remesh. Select it and then just remesh it. And then you could see here the progress of the remeshing in percentage, and there it is, it's been remeshed. And we go ahead and look at the wireframe. There it is, it's cleaner than what we had previously. Yeah, maybe there's some stuff that we need to smooth out, but overall this is better than we had. It's easier to work with. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off wireframe. We go to our sculpt mode and we could further just smooth things out. You see something that kind of look a little strange like this here. I'm gonna go, let me see here. Yeah, could go and smooth that out. So I'm gonna go to my smoothing and bring down my smoothing intensity and just smooth this part out. Here you go, bring down my smoothing. Yeah, something like that. And turn off the wireframe. Okay, that's cool. Okay, looking good. Let's go ahead and turn on our body. There's our body there. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and rename my mesh here body. This way I don't get confused. Turn that on. Again, I'm gonna select my retopo armor. So with your retopologized armor selected, okay, so this is the new clean mesh. It should be called retopo at the beginning. We're gonna add a solidify modifier to add thickness. Let's go over here and let's go add a solidify right here. And let's go ahead and adjust the thickness of this. Let's go to thickness and just crank it up. Putting it in a negative value, so I'm protruding it out. Okay, so something like that. All right, something like that would be great. And then we could, once you're happy with it, you could go ahead and apply the Solidify Modifier. I think I'm gonna undo that, Control Z. I think it's too thick, they were touching, this area is touching each other, so I'm gonna bring it down. Okay. I think I wanna make some adjustment around this area. Maybe I could kind of further separate this. So I'm gonna remove my solidify. Okay, so I'm gonna go isolate this meshed. So there's some fixing I need to do here. I'm gonna go back to my sculpt mode. I'm going to go ahead and mask this area out. Control I to invert it. Go to my grab brush and just kind of pull this up. So it's farther away from this mesh here. There you go. Okay, now back to object mode, and I'm gonna go add a solidify modifier and just go ahead and crank it up. There you go, and show my sphere, show my body. All right, so I think that is looking better. It's no longer touching like that. Great. And we could go ahead and apply the solidify, and we could go ahead and add a multi-resolution, and we could go ahead and subdivide this. I'm going to subdivide this up to 4 times. Some more. There you go. And you could see that it had definitely made the edges melted down. It looks almost like really melted down clay, and I will show you how to make it so that you could get these edges will be turned into a hard surface. So we're gonna make these outer parts here, we're gonna make sure they look chamfered. To make this hard edge, our armor, let's go to our sculpt mode. There are different ways to do this. We could use the scrape brush, which is this brush right here. Scrape, bring down the brush size. You could go ahead and scrape this, right? Now, this scrape brush is nice if you want to create a fast, hard surface sculpt. But if you want a more accurate type of sculpt that will give you a nice hard edge, you want it super clean, then it's best for us to use the pinch brush. And I'll show you how to use this to create the result that we want. Go to pinch brush and bring down your brush size. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be pinching the edge that we want to tighten, like this right here. We want to make this hard edge, and we don't want the brush size too big where it will affect the areas here, because we only really want to mess with this edge right here. So really adjust your brush size to get the result that you need. So I'm going to bring it down because I know I just want to affect this area. We want to pinch this and make it tight. And we also need to go make sure we change our stroke method for our pinch brush. Press E on your keyboard. If you press E, you could see the stroke methods options that you have. Just make sure you set it to curve. And then if you control right click on your mesh, you're going to see a dot. If you click and drag, you could see that you're able to create handles. If you click and drag, if you control right click and drag, you could create curves. If you control right click without dragging, you are creating sharp corners. If you guys have ever used Photoshop and there's a pencil there, that's kind of like how it works. You could create curves like that in here in Blender, same way that you could in Photoshop with the pen tool. Now, if you want to remove what you have made there, if you want to remove the curve, just press A as in apple twice. Yeah, press it twice until you see the entire thing. You might want to do it 3 times, but usually 2 times work. And you should see the entire points turn orange, and then you could delete it by pressing X on your keyboard. And there you go. And that's what we're going to be using. Okay, we're going to be using our curve and the pinch brush with the curve stroke method. Let's go control right click here, and then go ahead and just click and drag, and then control right click. Okay, so now let's press enter. You could press enter so that it will create that pinch wherever you made that curve. Press enter, and you could see that it has tightened. You could press enter again to make it even tighter. So you just press enter as much as you want, and then the more you press enter with the pinch brush, the more you will see it gets sharp, the edge. So I think doing it twice is good enough for me. Now I want to remove the curve. I'm going to go ahead and press A twice until it selects everything, turn orange, press X and delete it. And you can see that we got a nice hard edge there. I think it might be a little too hard for my taste. I'm going to go ahead and undo that. Control Z. And I'm going to go and delete this curve here. I'm going to go to my brush size for my pinch brush and crank it up just a tad bit. And I'm going to go ahead and create my curve again. Control right click and click and drag, and then control click here, and then press enter. 1, 2, and delete. Okay, so I think this is better. I'm cool with that. And then we're gonna basically do the same thing for this one. Control right click, control right click, and then around the areas where it curves, control right click, so you get a nice curve there, and then control right click here. And keep in mind I have symmetry turned on, so whatever I'm doing on one side, it does it on the other. So I'm gonna press enter twice. 1, 2, press A as an apple twice to select all the dots, and I'm going to remove it, and you can see that we got a nice hard edge. And if you want to smooth out this area, you can see that there's some mark here that happened. You could always go to the smoothing brush and just smooth the area out. You could also go to the flatten brush right here to flatten that. Go back and forth between flatten and smoothing. Usually smoothing also works. Alright, okay, something like that. Okay, now we also gonna do the same thing here. You can see that it's a little soft, so if we want to make it hard, we could go back to our pinch brush. Make sure you're on the curve stroke. Control right click here. Control right click and drag. Control right click and drag. Let me undo Control Z. I want to add a little bit more points here, right here, and then I'm gonna press Enter. 1, 2. Press A twice. 1, 2, and press X to delete. You can see that nice hard edge, and I want to do it also here. Control right click here. Control click right. Control right click. Press Enter twice, and remove. And likewise, I want to do it here also. And I also want to kind of fix this up. I'm going to go to my scrape brush and just kind of fix this to shape it out a little better before I do any of the curve. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my pinch brush and do the same thing here. Control click, control right click, control right click and drag, control right click and drag, and then control right click without dragging, and I'm gonna press Enter. 1, 2, press A twice and delete. There you go. And I could smooth this out. I'm gonna go to my flatten brush and just gonna smooth this out. Could hold Shift to just smooth it. Very great. Same thing here. Clean it up. And for this part here, I want to use my scrape brush to just kind of fix this up. There you go. And also here, I'm not really digging this area, so using my scrape brush and then my smoothing brush, kind of smooth that. Same here. Go. Smooth this. Okay, now I'm gonna go do the same thing. I'm gonna go to my pinch brush. And then press Enter. There you go. You've got a nice edge there. And I'm gonna go to my smoothing and then just smooth this. Okay. And I'm gonna do the same thing for this part here. Also right here. And right here, just going all around. And then I'm gonna go ahead and smooth this by flattening it, and then using the smoothing brush to make it cleaner. There you go. And I'm gonna do the same thing for here. Just gonna smooth it using the flatten brush, smooth this area out. Okay. Okay, so the same thing that I have done for the edges here, I'm gonna do the same thing for the rest of these. Okay, using the same process of using the pinch brush to create the hard edge that I need, creating the curve using using curve to create our line here, our curve all around the edges, and then pressing enter to pinch those edges to tighten them, and then using the flatten brush to just kind of smooth things out, polish some things out, and then holding shift to smooth around those areas. And that's what I'm going to do for the rest of these here. You feel free to watch me as I play the music in the background. Now that we are done dealing with the edges for our armor, what we need to do now is we need to create a mesh for our spider area for where we're going to apply a honeycomb texture to. Let's go to our object mode and let's select our torso here. We could just hide our armor for now. With our torso selected, we can just go ahead to sculpt mode, and you should still have your part of your mesh here masked out for what we initially did for creating the armor. And now all we have to do is Control I to invert it. We are going to need just the spider masked out, including the leg area, because we're going to need a separate mesh for it. And so what we need to do is we need to unmask these areas here, unmask those. So all that we have left are just the spider part, okay? So going back to our paint mask, we could go to the ends of the leg, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn off my stabilize stroke. Go to the ends of the leg and just break these up. I'm gonna go to each part of the spider's leg here and just clean this up here. I'm holding control as I erase the mask here. and go back to my paint mask and make sure the body here is all masked out. And then we need to grow our mask here. Okay, to grow this, let's go to mask, grow mask. Okay, so we got a much wider range that we could use. Let's go and show our armor. You could go ahead and remove any extra mask that's been masked here. Hold Control and just erase it. And also I want these, all of these here are gonna have the honeycomb texture, and I don't want this to show either. Okay, yeah, something like that. Okay. And let me hide the armor, and I'm gonna go mask and sharpen mask, and we could go ahead and extract this. Go to mask, mask extract, and let's go ahead and make sure we turn off extract as solid and press OK, and just wait for a tad bit. There you go. Now we press G, and you can see we have a separate mesh now that we can work with. Let's go ahead and isolate it. Shift H, go to Sculpt Mode, go to Smoothing, and we can go ahead and smooth out the edges so it's a little cleaner. Now we could go ahead and retopologize this. We could do a quad remesher so that we have a much cleaner geometry. So to do that, let's go to our object mode. Let's go to our quad remesher. Quad count, I'm going to set it to a lower value. We don't need that much of a higher value here because we don't need every single detail like we did for the armor. So I'm going to just set this one to 5,000. And the same settings that I had previously, adaptive size 50%, quad count, detect hard edges, and just remesh it. And it's doing it. Okay, and there you go. You could check out the wireframe. Hit the tab key. There it is. It's showing. We could also now add a Solidify Modifier to add some thickness here. Let's go here to Modifier, Solidify, and we could crank up the thickness. I'm putting it in the negative direction so it pops out. We don't want it that thick, just thick enough so that we could see it sticking out of the chest, sticking out of the torso area. And we could also turn on our armor as we do this and turn on the body. You can see what we're working with. So I still think it's a little too thick. So, okay, so I just want it to pop up just enough so that we could see it in the front here. And we could also right click on it and shade smooth. That way we have a smoother mesh. Okay, good. Now we could go ahead and add a honeycomb texture to this. We got our model done and everything. We could begin adding our materials and add the honeycomb texture. Let's go ahead and add the materials and textures just so that we could spice this up. Starting with this, we could go ahead and create a material for this one. Create a random material. I'm gonna call this one red underscore armor. And let's go to our viewport shading. For the base color, of course, I'm gonna set it to more of a reddish color. You could probably give it more of a darker red. Make it darker. And then we could give it more of a metallic feel to it. So on the metallic section here, just crank it all the way up. Okay. And we could also tighten those highlights. For the roughness, the higher the value, the more spread out the highlights will be. So we want to just tighten it to make it more metallic. And for our torso, we could create a brand new material for it. We call this one blue_matte. And I'm going to make it more of a bluish, kind of a darker blue color. Yeah, maybe something like that. Yeah, darker blue. Yeah, something like that. And we could go to our render and see what we're working with. Okay, so I want to actually render this in cycles. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to set it to cycles. And we could add a light in the scene. I'm going to go back here to my solid view. And we could go ahead and create a light for this one. I'm going to create an area light and just move it up. Let's go to our material preview. Go to our cycles here. And you could see, we could see the light there. We can move this in this direction right here, and move it up some more. And I'm gonna go and rotate this so it's more facing the torso area. And I'm just gonna move it this way. And then this way, scale it up. And we could go ahead and crank up the power. You could see more. I'm gonna set the power to about 100, maybe 200. I'm gonna bring this down, like that. And I want to make another light here on this side on the left. That way we could have some highlights on the side here. So I'm going to go ahead and Shift D to make a copy. Just move this here on the side. And it's going to go ahead and rotate this. I'm going to set my rotation to local. And then just going to move it this way. And I want to show some more of the ab sections. I'm going to move it down, something like that. And I'm going to increase the power. Maybe let's see if I set it to 500. And I think for the color, I want to make the material here maybe lighter, something like that. Make it pop out more. And of course, we need to add something for our spider here. We could add a honeycomb texture for that. I'm going to go to my material preview so it's easier in the system. And I'm going to go to our create a brand new view here. And we could create a shader editor. And then we could also create another view here. This is going to be the shader editor at the top. And for this one, I'm going to set it to UV editor. I'm going to go ahead and select the spider mesh here. Okay, so for this one here, we're going to add a brand new material. And I'm going to go ahead and just call this one Honeycomb_matte. Okay, so we have our material here. Now, I want you guys to go to google.com and just find a honeycomb seamless texture. You could download really any of these. You could tell it's seamless. If you hover your mouse, it says it's equal in width and height. So that's what you want, something that's equal in width and height. Black and white photo for Honeycomb. And once you do that, we could plug it on the base color, Shift A. And let's go ahead and add an image texture here. And then go ahead and open up the texture that you downloaded and just plug it onto the base color. Okay. Right now, you don't see anything because we got to do some projection here for our UV editor. And another thing that we should do is we should add a texture coordinates. So with our node for our image texture, you could Control-T on your keyboard to create a mapping and texture coordinates. And that will only work if you have Node Wrangler turned on. So if you're going to be able to add, if you want to be able to add the texture coordinates and mapping by pressing Control-T, make sure you go to Preferences and make sure that you have Node Wrangler turned on to be able to just create these right away. Okay. Now, with our Remesher selected for our spider, we need to actually create a UV for that so we could actually see our texture. Let's hit the Tab key, press A to select everything. And I still have my Solidify here, so I'm going to go ahead and, for the modifier, make sure you apply Solidify. Hit the Tab key. And yeah, just go ahead and select everything for that mesh. Right click. And we're going to do a projection here. Actually, press U on your keyboard. And then you're going to do a cube projection. All right. And you could see that there's the honeycomb. We could finally see it. All right. It's a fast way to just create a quick texture here. And then we could adjust the scaling because it's too large. We could gonna go ahead and bring down the scale. So maybe I could set it to 10. Okay, that is too small. Maybe I could set it to 6. Yeah, that would probably work. So now that we know the size of our honeycomb, what we could do is we could plug in what we have for this. We could unplug it from the base color, and we're gonna plug this in on a bump node that we're gonna plug it onto the normal. Shift A, and let's go plug in a bump. There you go. And we could plug in our color onto the height and the normal onto normal. And so we see that there's some bump there. We see our render. Let's take a look at our render so far, see what we're working with. All right, so there is some bumpiness there. If we go ahead and set the strength of the bump to 0, it's just plain and flat. We crank it up all the way to 1. Now we could see more of that bumpiness. And we could also change the color of this. So we could go to our material here. And for the base material, we could set it to a darker color. Yeah, darker color like that. And we could even, if you want, you could mess around with the roughness. You could make it more rubbery, spread out the highlights. I want it to be popping out some more, so I want some shininess to it. Feel free to kind of mess around to make this even look better. In this case, I could probably make this a little darker. There you go. Yeah, I think this might, the red part of the armor, I think it's too reddish, so I'm going to desaturate it. I'm going to go to my S here and desaturate it to give more of a realistic feel. Okay, so maybe something like that. Yeah, something like that. And maybe the blue part could also be desaturated. Things that are realistic is more on the saturate. You might want to desaturate it if you want it to look more realistic. Right? Cool. And I hope you guys learned a little something from here. See you guys in the next future Victory 3D YouTube videos.